The doctor is in. No religion allowed here, just grace and truth. You've entered the No Religion Zone with Pastor Greg Lilly.
Hey, you've just entered the NRZ, the No Religion Zone. I want to take you to Romans chapter 7 and talk about a bad marriage. Okay? Not a good one, but a bad one. So let's just jump right into it. Romans chapter 7, verse 1, because this is the analogy that Paul gives us here. He says, "Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, how that the law hath dominion over a man as long as he lives. For the woman which hath a husband is bound by the law to her husband so long as he lives. But if the husband be dead, she's loosed from the law of the husband. So then, if while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband be dead, she is free from that law, so that she is no adulteress, though she may be married to another man. Wherefore, my brethren," verse 4, "ye also are become dead to the law by the body of Christ, that you should be married to another, even to him who is raised from the dead, that we should bring forth fruit unto God." What does that mean? What does Romans chapter 7 and those first 4 verses mean? He's using a marriage to show you something. And this is something everybody understands in marriage. So let's just play this thing out and I'll explain to you what I think he means. Romans chapter 7 is that you're dead to the law. Romans chapter 6 is you're dead to sin. So Paul's it goes in succession. Romans 5 is you're justified by faith. 4 and 5. 6 is that you're dead to sin. 7, you're dead to the law. Romans 8, you're alive to the Holy Spirit. You're alive to the Spirit, the law of the Spirit. So in chapter 7, dead to the law, because we've been talking about these things by promise. The last 3 or 4 weeks we've been talking about that the covenant of promise, that everything that God gives us is by promise. It's no longer by law. It's amazing, and I'm going to repeat myself till I'm blue in the face, and that is that there's only one covenant out of 7 covenants. There's only one covenant that's not unilateral, and that's the Mosaic covenant. It was conditional, and it was only given to show man he can't do it by law. Paul said the law was a schoolmaster, a tutor, to teach us this can't be done by doing. This can't be done by performing. We can never do enough, and we can never perform enough. Someone has to come in our stead and live a vicarious life for us, not only for us, but as us. And that was Jesus. He came and fulfilled it all, thus removing the law, taking us out from under it. Now, let's look at this bad marriage. Why do I call it a bad marriage? Paul says in Romans 8 that there's nothing wrong with the law. Okay? The law is perfect. The law is, there's nothing, it's flawless. Right? It's flawless. But the problem is you and me, the flesh. That's the problem. And God has to end that way of living that we call old man, and then raises us to a new man with a new husband. The husband in Romans 7 is the law. And there's nothing wrong with it, and the law is going to live forever. Okay? The law goes on forever. But we have a dilemma. If the law doesn't die, I'm stuck with it the rest of my life. So let me show you what Paul means in Romans 7 by looking at a bad marriage. So here's this woman. She represents you and I. And she marries this perfectionist. He represents the law. And his demands on her, demands. He demands breakfast at 5 o'clock in the morning. He demands that his shoes be shined. He demands that his clothes, now we're talking about this culture in that day. And he demands that his his shirt's ironed. He's just got all these demands, and she's under these requirements. And as long as she does these demands, he's happy. He's happy. But these demands. I mean, she's not perfect, so she may burn the food. The food may not be ready on time. She didn't get to the laundry today because the kids had this, that, and the other going on. And so he starts coming home and he sees he does that white glove test, and he does it on top of the door frame. Who cleans that half the time? Okay, but he's going to do it because that should have been done. And so he is a perfection. Have you ever been under a perfectionist? No matter what you do, they're going to find something wrong. That's the law. No matter what you do, the law is always going to find something wrong with you. Who can be married to that? That's what Paul says in Romans 8. There's nothing wrong with the law. His requirements and demands, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just that you and I aren't able to live up to them. And it's just going to just condemn us and browbeat us to death every time you try. This is why you go to some of these churches. No matter what you do, there's always more to do. Once you get this one sin under your belt, boy, you got to go after this one. It's never ending. You don't pray enough. You don't give enough. You don't witness enough. You don't come to church enough, and you don't treat your wife good enough. You don't raise your kids good enough. Your kids do this, you should be doing that, and it never ends. It never ends. This is what religion does to us. In Romans chapter 7, this woman is married to religion because it has demands that she can't live up to. Do you know the law? The law is like a mirror. So let's say if you're, ladies, you get up in the morning and you're getting ready for work or whatever you do for the day. You put your makeup on, you do your hair, and the mirror is going to show you what you missed. Okay, too much eye stuff here, or not enough makeup, or whatever on here, or guys, you shaved and you missed a spot. Okay, the mirror is always going to show you the flaws. And guess what? That's all it can do. It can't help remove. If I get in the mirror and I think, oh, where'd that mark come from? Where in the world did that? Unbelievable. It's saying, you got something wrong there. I see it. The mirror's pointing it out. But the mirror's not going to come out with a rag, a washcloth, and wipe it off for me. See, that's the law. All it can do is condemn you. All it can do is point out your shortcomings. All it can do is point out your sins. But it can never lift a hand to help you. This is the dilemma the woman's in. She's in this marriage, and this man is making all these requirements and demands on her and not lifting a finger to help her. It's all on her, and she can't do it. And sooner or later, that law, that man, she's going to come under that crushing and burn out. Something's going to happen. She can't do it. She can't do it. And so Paul's trying to show us something here. Now, here's the dilemma. This woman can't get out from under him. If she divorces him, in that culture and the law, she's an adulteress. So she don't want to be that. So she's stuck. If this man represents the law, he's never going to die. Right? So Paul says, you die. Since he's not going to die, you die. You die to the law. So in other words, since this guy's going to live forever, I'm the only way for me to get out of this, I die. And what do you think Christ put you on the cross with him for? Romans 6, to die to sins, but also, Romans 7, to die to the law. The law won't die, sin won't go away, so you die. You just remove yourself out of the equation. On the cross with Christ, and when you're raised, that law has no more jurisdiction over you. What do you mean by that? Let me give you another analogy. I love my examples. They help me. I hope they help you. So let's say this guy goes into a bank and he robs the bank. So what crime did he commit? Armed robbery. Okay. But cops are out there. He pulls out a gun Now it's armed robbery. It's robbery, pulls out the gun. Now it's armed robbery. He's got two crimes now. But the cops are outside. There's no way he's going to get out, so he has to take a hostage, and that's kidnapping. So now that's 3 charges, right? As he's going out, they get into a little scuffle with the gunfire, and he shoots one officer and shoots him dead. Now he's a murderer. So now he's a robber. He's an armed robber. He's now a kidnapper, and now he's a murderer. He gets into the car with the woman, and then they take off. Now he's speeding. That's another crime. Well, they use that, but I'm just telling you, he's racking up the crimes is what I'm trying to show you. He's hitting cars and reckless driving, hitting cars and leaving the scene of the crime, and he's just racking up all these crimes that they're going to bring before him. If they catch him, they're going to bring him before the court, and all these things that are wrong with him, that crimes he's committed. So they're on this high-speed chase. And of course, he can't drive as good as the speed of the car, and he crashes, rolls the car, and he's dead. Now we're going to be nice in this story, and we're going to let the woman go. She has a couple bruises and scratches or whatever, so she gets off. She gets out. She's fine. He's dead though. Now all those charges that he was racking up, the law is going to charge him with. He's dead. So can the law, all these crimes, go with him where he's going after he dies? No. The death ends all the crimes. In other words, the law no longer has jurisdiction over him because of his death. Now, if he walks out of that car, it has jurisdiction over him. But because he's dead, it's over, folks. They got to drop the charges. He's dead. There's no one to charge. The guy died. And this is kind of like this situation with us. We're racking up all these sins and all this stuff happening, and because this is what the law is doing. It's condemning us. It's condemning us. It's condemning. And the only way out from under the law, unless you love condemnation and you love that brutality that the law does to us, because we can't live. We're not a good match. We're not a good match. And so we have to die because the law is going. This is what he's saying in Romans 7. This woman married this guy who is a perfectionist, who only points out what she does wrong and never praises her for what she does right. It's always what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong. Here you're missing it, there you're missing it, and so forth and so on. So Paul says we die. The only way you got from under this is death. Not the law. The law ain't dying. You die. Sin's not dying, Romans 6, you die. So Paul says, you can't marry another or you're an adulteress. Now watch. So once she dies, remember what he says. If the man dies, she's free to marry another. But since the man's not going to die, she has to die, but she gets to marry another. She dies and marries another. He ain't going to die. She has to die. And when she dies, she's free from the law, so she can marry another, and that other person is Christ. She now gets to marry Christ by dying to the law. Remember, it's either law or Jesus, and Jesus is the end of the law, Paul says. So why would you want to be under law when you can be married to Jesus? But people don't have that revelation. I'm trying to give that to you, but let's finish this analogy out that this illustration Paul's given us here in Romans 7. So this woman marries another, and this man's nothing like the law. In fact, remember the old man the law would demand breakfast at 5 o'clock in the morning. This new husband, he wakes up at 4:30 and has breakfast prepared for her. He comes home from work and he does the laundry. He helps her. What he has committed to her is his love and his help. And you know what grace is? Divine enablement. God says, I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I don't come inside and do it for you and with you. So this is the new husband. He's wonderful. Who wouldn't want to be married to him? And this is what Paul's trying to paint the picture is this old husband, he's brutal. And he's going to live forever. The only way to get out from under that is you die. And you know, it's sad that there are women that have had to live under a hard, brutal person like that, and they die first, and they get liberated. Let me tell you a true story. My aunt, now she's passed on, but she was married to a supposedly Christian man. Everybody knew he beat her. He did. I mean, he was horrible, horrible, and. But she was religious, and she was not going to divorce him. And for whatever reason, she hung in there for years. It was her second marriage. She had to give up her 3 kids in order to have a life with him and the new kids that they had together. And so the other 3 kids just kind of had to go on their way to grandma and, just try to move on, the best that they could. And it was a horrible situation, but it was what it was. Well, he finally died. I don't know how many years ago, but he finally died. And wow, a change in life. This woman finally was able to live. Finally able to live from what her own son told me. I'm just telling you what he told. She is just all over the place. She's just, like something was taken off that was crushing her and causing her to be miserable. It died. Now remember, in the scenario, we got to die. But in this real life example, he dies. She moves on. She's great. She's dead by, today. She's obviously dead, or I wouldn't be telling the story. But a lot of people have to go through this in real life. But you and I, we all have to go through it with the law versus Christ. And Jesus says, look, I let you marry this guy to show you can't live up to his standards. All he'll do is point things out, but he'll never give you a helping hand. All right, so let me leave you with this. I recommend this book. Many may not like it. Most people I talk to like it. Is The Normal Christian Life by Watchman Nee. I want to read this one paragraph that goes along with this topic here. Now listen to this. I got about 10 minutes here. He says, grace, now this whole thing is about law and grace. Grace means that God does something for me. Law means that I do something for God. God has certain holy and righteous demands which he places upon me. That's the law. Okay? That is law. Now, if law means that God requires something of me for their fulfillment, then deliverance from the law, and that's what Romans 7 is about, then deliverance from the law means that he no longer requires that from me, but himself provides it. Did you get that? Let me read that again. Grace means that I do something for God, or grace means that God does something for me. Law means I do something for God. Now, if the law means that God requires something of me for their fulfillment, then deliverance from the law means that he no longer requires that from me, but instead provides it. Law implies that God requires me to do something for him. Deliverance from law implies that he exempts me from doing it, and that in grace he does it himself. Where I is the carnal man of Romans 7:14, need do nothing for God. That is deliverance from law. That I do nothing for God means deliverance from law. All right, now, he'll go on to say that he determined that he will no longer do anything for God. You say that to most people today, they're going to think you're backslidden. They're going to say you're a heretic. They're just not going to be able to track with what you're saying. But listen to what, and he's only surmising or doing commentary on Romans 7. This is how Watchman Nee comes with it. He says, look, grace means God does something for me. Law means I do something for him. If I leave my house right now and get in the car and get on the highway, first thing I'm going to see is a speed limit. What is that law? That's a law, the speed limit. When I get on this local Route 50 here, it's 55 before I can get to the interstate where it's 70. So 55 miles an hour. What does that mean to me? I'm driving and I see some metal sign with the word 5, with the numbers 55 on it. What does that mean to me? It's requiring me to do something. Law requires you to obey it. You got to do something. Well, deliverance from the law. So if all of a sudden our governor says, every road's an Autobahn. He just exempted us from the law. He just delivered us from at least the speed limit signs. So now I can go out there on the highway and there's no requirements. It's the Autobahn, right? The only thing is, when I get up to 80, I might feel a little jittery. When I get up to 100, I'm like, okay, it's going to be whatever law is working within me, personally. But that's not the analogy. What I'm saying is, law means I have to do something. Deliverance from the law is I no longer does it. Now watch this. Watchman Nee is saying, if that's true, then God requires nothing from me. Oh my God. I can't. That's foreign today. That statement will rock the airwaves and split churches. Wait a minute. I'm never going to do anything for God ever again? Well, if you're going to take Romans 7 for what it means, we are delivered from the law. Law means it requires me to do something. Deliverance from the law means it no longer requires anything from me. Being dead to the law means that I'm not required to do anything for God at all. Now, many will say that's hyper grace. Call it what you want. You're delivered from the law. God is not putting any requirement. Well, then that means we can just go over and do whatever we want. See, again, why go there? Why is that? That is ingrained. We are brainwashed into that knee-jerk reaction. The problem is you don't know grace. Titus says grace teaches us to live a godly life. Have you even tried grace enough to see if it works? Grace is a person in us that does it. So if deliverance from the law means that God no longer requires it from me, then grace means what he used to require, grace means he does it for me. He now does it with me. That's the new husband. That's the union that you're one with. What's a marriage? It's a oneness. And so in union with the Godhead, Christ in me, the hope of glory. It's no longer I who lives, but it's Christ who lives within me. And the life I live now in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God. So that means that he is doing it for me. He's doing it through me. He's doing it for me. If you go to Philippians chapter 2, verse 13, 12, work out your salvation, fear and trembling. Well, he tells you how to work it out with the next verse. For it is God who is at work in you to will and to do his good pleasure. If you look that up in the Amplified Classic version of the Bible, Philippians 2:13 in the AMPC, it's phenomenal. And I'm going to paraphrase it. I don't have it in front of me. For not by your own works. Not by your own works. Why? Because he's no longer requiring your works. So the Amplified version starts off with, not by your own works. For it is God who is all the while effectually at work in you. And here's where I'm going to paraphrase it. Giving you the desire and the power to do his will. So you don't have to come up with the power to perform. You don't have to come up with the will to even want to do it. See, the problem with humanity is that there are times I've got the power to mow the grass. I got energy. But I don't feel like it. So I'm going to take that energy and go golfing. Yeah, I could do that. I got the power, but I don't got the will. Or the opposite can happen to me. I wake up and I've got the will. I know it needs to be done and I want to do it. But man, I'm tired. And my body's hurting. And I just don't have it. I want to do it, but I ain't got the power to pull it off. God says, I got you on both ends. Grace is this. I'm going to give you the will. You're going to want to do it. And then I'm going to give you the power so you're able to do it. So he got you on both ends. I mean, that is grace. That's the guy you're married to. That's the new husband of Romans 7. He says, I'll give you the will and then I'll give you the power. And it's effortless at that point. You'll be out there and it's not you doing it, but Christ in you doing it with you. Not alone, on your own, trying to get it done. It's a supernatural energy, ability, life, out of union, out of promise. Not law. Not law. Man, what husband do you... And you know what gets me? People still want to go back to that old man, that old husband, not the old man of Paul, but the old husband of Romans 7. I just, Israel wanted to go back as slaves to their taskmasters. What is up that people can get delivered from this and yet want to go back to it? I don't get it. I don't get it. It's obviously their eyes aren't open, or they don't have the revelation, or they're too fearful. I don't know. But religion has really done a number on the church today. Has always done. Since the tree of knowledge of good and evil, religion has done a number on the church. And God has to come in with a unilateral covenant called the covenant of promise and deliver us from the covenant of law, and says, I'm your new husband. I no longer require anything from you. I want to end with this one more time. Watchman Nee says, I am committed to never do another thing for God, because he's not requiring anything from me. And whatever he requires, by grace, he does it through me. I just trust him and the life within, and organically, out of that mystical union, we're living life together, and he's writing the law on my heart. Got that? It's from within. You live from the inside out, and it's a covenant of promise. We're delivered from the law. We have a new husband. Let's enjoy our new marriage. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the NRZ. To contact us, go to our website at greglilly.com. And if God lays on your heart to give, according to Galatians 6:6, you can access the different ways you can give. That's greglilly.com.